The screen is pitch black until the sharp click of a tube TV breaks the silence. Static flashes, giving way to faded, black and white 8mm footage. It doesn't show the glittering skyscrapers of the Loop or the pristine, tree-lined boulevards. Instead, the camera pans down a narrow, gritty passage. Suddenly, the sounds hit you, the deafening clang of a metal trash can lid striking concrete, the sharp thud of a baseball against a red brick wall, and the heavy slam of a thick wooden garage door. The frame freezes on a man in a white undershirt, smoking a cigarette next to a rusted Chevy. There is an unwritten rule in Chicago that outsiders never quite understand. Tourists always look up at the skyline or marvel at the perfectly manicured front lawns. But that was just a carefully curated stage. If you truly want to know where the soul of this city lived, you don't look out front. You have to step out back. They say time erases all wounds, but it also buries the truth. Welcome to the history they hoped you would forget. Let's dust off the archives. Today, we are not talking about Al Capone, the Great Fire, or the neon glow of the Chicago theater. We are turning the page to a discarded chapter hidden within the 1,900 miles of concrete grid running behind millions of homes, the alleyways. For the millions of children born in the 1950s, 60s, and 70s, the alley was never just a place to park a car or leave the trash. It was an independent kingdom. It was the absolute backbone of the entire social structure. Back then, everyone understood the golden rule: the front street was for show, but the alley was for real life. But the official story is missing one crucial, terrifying piece. Why was such a vibrant, authentic cultural ecosystem, a physical legacy that intimately connected millions of people, quietly and ruthlessly erased from our modern world? To uncover how this massive piece of history vanished into thin air, we first need to rewind the clock and step back into a world that feels both beautifully familiar and drastically different. Let's go back to the beginning. Close your eyes and let your mind drift back to a late summer afternoon in Chicago in the mid-1960s. The temperature is finally dropping, and the air hangs heavy with a distinct blend of scents that no modern candle could ever replicate. It is that earthy smell of wet concrete after a sudden Midwest downpour, mixed with the cooling exhaust of muscle cars, the sharp tang of Lucky Strike cigarettes, and the greasy, mouth-watering aroma of a homemade backyard barbecue. Life back then was simply a gas. Lining both sides of the narrow 16-foot concrete stretch stood the garages. They were not the lifeless, automated aluminum roll-up doors we see today. They were thick, heavy wooden doors, often painted in peeling green or stark white, which shut with a hollow, echoing thud that resonated down the entire block. The alley was the undisputed town square of every neighborhood. The fathers rarely gathered in the front living rooms. They met out back. They would swing those heavy wooden doors wide open, lean against the hoods of their Fords and Chevys with grease-stained hands and cold beers, arguing over the Cubs game or the latest political news on the AM radio. Out front, folks might just offer a polite nod. But in the alley, they were brothers. And for the children, this narrow strip of pavement was the entire universe. The park was too far, and the front lawn was strictly off-limits. So, an entire generation grew up wedged between red bricks and metal garbage cans. Do you remember that feeling, playing alley baseball with a chipped wooden bat and a scuffed tennis ball? The neighbor's brick wall was the strike zone, and a dented metal trash can was first base. It was a truly groovy time, a pure, wild freedom that kids locked in air-conditioned rooms today will simply never understand. If you lived through these times, you know the history books don't always tell the whole story. Drop down to the comments and share what you remember, whether it was the rough feel of that wooden garage door under your hands, the smell of oil, or the sound of a baseball echoing off the bricks. I want to hear it. Your memories are the real history. and I read every single one. But life in the alley was never a picture-perfect postcard. It was rough around the edges, occasionally messy, and utterly brutal when winter arrived. When the howling winds off Lake Michigan swept through, the alley transformed into a freezing wind tunnel. Snow piled up in thick, unyielding mounds, turning the concrete into a treacherous sheet of white. The image of bundled-up men breathing white clouds into the biting cold, shoveling massive drifts just to get their cars out. And the frantic spinning of tires on black ice, these are burned into the DNA of every Chicagoan. People loved the alley not because it was pristine, but because it was undeniably real. However, that very roughness, that unpolished authenticity, would soon become the perfect excuse for forces eager to reshape the American way of life. It was an era of optimism, a time when the future looked nothing but bright. But beneath that flawless, chrome-plated surface, the gears of a hidden catastrophe were already turning, and almost no one saw it coming. The disaster did not arrive in the form of a wrecking ball or a sudden natural catastrophe. It crept in under the pristine, unassailable guise of progress and sanitation, starting in the late 1970s and stretching into the early 80s. City planners and local officials began to look at the vibrant, chaotic ecosystem of Chicago's alleys not as a cultural heritage to be preserved, but as a problem to be eradicated. The first and most symbolic blow struck at the very heart of the alley's daily rhythm, the coordinated war on the metal garbage can. Do you recall the symphony of the early morning? It usually started right around 5:30. The heavy mechanical growl of the garbage truck lumbering down the narrow concrete path, followed by the sheer, deafening clatter of sanitation workers tossing those heavy metal lids to the ground. Then came the loud scraping of empty, dented tin cans dragged across the concrete, sending tiny sparks flying in the dim morning light. That noise might have made a few people grumble as they tried to sleep, but it was the undeniable heartbeat of the city waking up. Then, the city decided to replace them all with massive, uniform, dark blue plastic bins. They had wheels. They were silent. They were lifeless, practically overnight. The boisterous morning symphony of Chicago was permanently muted. Initially, a lot of folks absolutely flipped a wig. People were genuinely hacked off and confused by this sudden, forceful shift. Those massive plastic bins took up too much space, breaking up the familiar landscape of the alley. More importantly, they robbed the neighborhoods of that personalized, lived-in feeling where every family had their own recognizable tin can, often with their house number sloppily painted on the side. But the authorities deployed a brilliant, highly effective psychological campaign. They began to frame the beloved metal trash cans as filthy relics of a bygone era, claiming they were nothing more than magnets for rats and symbols of an outdated, unhygienic past. The city planners acted like a bunch of wet blankets, determined to scrub away the grit that gave Chicago its unique character. They wanted to transform the working-class soul of the city into a polished, sterilized commercial hub, and a noisy alley filled with kids playing baseball and fathers smoking just did not fit their shiny new brochure. Slowly, but surely, the campaign expanded. Officials actively encouraged residents to tear down those hand-built wooden garages and replace them with uniform concrete or stamped aluminum structures, completely sealed off by remote-controlled automated doors. Here is where the true smokescreen of deception was laid thick. The public was sold the irresistible idea of absolute convenience and ultimate safety. Picture the pitch they gave us: you drive home from work. Push a button on your sun visor. The aluminum door rolls up, you pull right in, and the door rolls down securely behind you. You step right into your kitchen without ever having to brave the cold or touch a freezing wooden handle. But the silent, devastating catch was this: you also never had to see or speak to your neighbors again. Convenience was being weaponized to quietly sever the social ties that held these resilient communities together. Uncovering these forgotten shadows and dissecting how our way of life was systematically dismantled takes time and deep research. If you appreciate bringing these lost stories back into the light, please tap that like button. It is a small gesture that truly helps keep this history alive. We are not just looking for facts, we are actively protecting the memory of who we used to be. It was an incredibly effective illusion, and most people bought right into it. As central air conditioning became a standard feature, it pulled families off their back steps and locked them deep inside their homes. The warm yellow light spilling out from the open garages faded away, and the lively chatter was replaced by an eerie, sanitized silence. Everyone was convinced they were purchasing a better, cleaner, and higher-class lifestyle. But there was a massive, gaping hole in this narrative. A heavy price that no urban planning article or history textbook ever dared to mention. It was arguably one of the greatest cultural sleights of hand of the 20th century. For decades, the public accepted this watered-down version of events. The headlines faded, the files were boxed up, and the world simply moved on. But buried deep within those dusty archives lay a secret so profound, it would shatter everything we thought we knew. The truth buried beneath the rubble of those old wooden garages is not a classified government document, but a sociological reality so profound it should send a chill down your spine. The truth is, the alley was never just an architectural infrastructure. Chicago's sprawling network of back alleys was, in fact, the first and most successful physical social network in human history, existing decades before the internet or smartphones were even conceived. When city planners eradicated the perceived messiness of the alley in exchange for the sterile cleanliness of plastic bins and automated doors, they were not just cleaning up a city, they were executing a calculated assault on the very concept of community. It is a far-out realization, brilliant in its subtlety and devastating in its impact. The front lawn, with its perfectly trimmed grass, was where America displayed its individualism and class status. But the alley was where we practiced collectivism. When you walked out to dump the trash, you inevitably bumped into a neighbor. When you fixed your car, you had to borrow a wrench from the guy next door. When a stray baseball shattered a window, you were forced to face the music, apologize, and learn conflict resolution face to face. The alley forced human interaction. It was the vital glue that held a resilient society together. This vibrant social ecosystem was systematically dismantled through three distinct layers of modern design. First came the media-driven fear. Throughout the late 70s and 80s, the evening news constantly painted urban alleys as nothing more than dark havens for crime and gang activity. While safety was a legitimate concern in some areas, the narrative was heavily exaggerated to push residents into building towering 6-foot wooden privacy fences, replacing the short chain-link barriers that once allowed neighbors to chat over the property line. Visibility was obstructed, and with it, the natural neighborhood watch vanished. Second, modern architectural design deliberately eliminated what sociologists call lingering spaces. Those massive new plastic bins were designed specifically to be lifted by mechanical arms, requiring zero human interaction. The automated garage door turned the automobile into an iron cocoon, allowing people to travel from the highway directly into their bedrooms without ever breathing the neighborhood air. Finally, the commercialization of entertainment dealt the fatal blow. Children were no longer pushed out the back door with the familiar instruction to go play in the alley until the streetlights came on. Instead, they were lured inside by color televisions, Atari consoles, and eventually, the endless scroll of smartphones. The alley became a wasteland, a quiet, dark strip of concrete running behind isolated homes. And what was the ultimate price we paid for all this so-called progress? An absolute epidemic of loneliness that is ravaging America today. It is a heartbreaking bummer to realize that millions of older adults now sit in incredibly comfortable, climate-controlled houses surrounded by smart devices, yet have never felt more disconnected from the world. When people say they miss the clatter of the metal trash cans, they are not romanticizing noise pollution. They are longing for the sound of life. They are missing the undeniable proof that other human beings were right there, existing alongside them. Meanwhile, millions of younger generations are growing up in the absolute sterility of modern suburbs or high-rise apartments, entirely devoid of the gritty, hands-on social education their parents received. They do not know the smell of motor oil and sweat on a fading summer evening, or the simple warmth of gathering behind a garage for no reason at all to decompress after a long day. We traded the cradle of human connection for the cold convenience of a rolling aluminum door. This is exactly the kind of truth they tried to sweep under the rug. Do you know someone who loves uncovering the real story? Share this video with them right now, before this piece of history fades away again. Send it to that childhood friend you used to play alley baseball with, just to remind them that your shared memories are not only real, but they are incredibly important. Today, if you take a walk down those old alleys on the north side or south side of Chicago at night, the darkness feels incredibly thick. There is no laughter echoing off the bricks. There is no clatter of metal. There is only the cold, harsh glare of motion sensor security lights that flicker on and off, illuminating the rows of dark blue plastic bins standing silently in the cold like tombstones for a dead culture. The sheer weight of this revelation forces us to look at our past through an entirely different lens. The voices that were silenced back then are finally speaking to us today, echoing across the decades with a message we can no longer ignore. But has the legacy of the Chicago alley truly vanished completely, in a purely physical sense? That sprawling network of concrete still exists. It still snakes its way silently behind the houses, an undeniable geographic footprint. Occasionally, if you look closely enough at an old, unpainted brick wall that has somehow survived the wrecking ball, you might still make out the faint, chalky white rectangle of a strike zone drawn by kids half a century ago. Those quiet relics sit completely undisturbed amidst the modern urban sprawl, functioning like fossils of a golden era. They are the final physical proof that we were once there. We lived fiercely, loudly, and together in those narrow corridors. Looking back at the story of Chicago's old alleys provides a profoundly deep philosophical lesson about the cyclical nature of history and the true essence of memory. History is not just the grand events printed in thick textbooks, nor is it merely the polished speeches of mayors or the sterile blueprints drawn up by city planners. True history resides in the microscopic, everyday details of ordinary human life. It lives in the heavy thud of a closing wooden door, in the acrid smell of tires spinning on black ice, and in the unspoken solidarity of two neighbors making eye contact while taking out the trash in the freezing morning mist. The loss of this entire social ecosystem is a tragedy of human-made amnesia, born from a blind sprint toward isolated convenience. Yet, the fact that we are sitting here today, dusting off these memories and calling them by their rightful names, is a brilliant triumph of the human spirit. The memory of the alley reminds us that a flawless exterior can never provide genuine happiness. It is only meant for others to look at. The authentic life, no matter how messy or covered in dirt, is what actually nourishes the soul. That spirit, that rugged sense of belonging, was truly the bee's knees, a pinnacle of community life that we must proudly pass down. So, we must return to the question we asked at the very beginning. Why did such a monumental piece of our culture vanish completely from public consciousness? The answer is now painfully clear. It did not just evaporate into thin air. We actively packed it away, hiding it behind automated doors and glowing screens. Because we mistakenly believed that convenience was worth more than connection. But we were wrong. The alley did not die because it became obsolete. It was suffocated by a society that grew increasingly terrified of genuine human interaction, realizing this is not meant to leave us drowning in sorrow, but rather to wake us up, urging us to look closely at the core values we are currently losing inside our own homes. Our past is filled with voices waiting to be heard, to make sure you never miss another journey into the forgotten pages of history. Please hit that subscribe button and join our community of truth seekers. Together, we can continue to shine a light into the forgotten corners of time. As the shadows of the past retreat, we are left standing in the light of truth, carrying a legacy that now belongs to us. But the story doesn't truly end here. It lives on in how we choose to remember it. Our journey back in time today is not just about reminiscing over a physical space. It is a heartfelt tribute to a lost way of life. Close your eyes one last time. Listen to the distinct clatter of that metal trash can lid echoing through the early morning mist. Take a deep breath and let your lungs fill with the earthy scent of a sudden downpour soaking the cracked concrete. It was never a pristine picture. It was covered in motor oil, scuffed up, and undeniably messy. But Lord, it was ours. It was the absolute, breathing pulse of a resilient America. The front of the house was where you lived, but the alley was where you grew up. Thank you for spending your time with me today to remember what was almost lost. If you found value in this story, please leave a like, subscribe, and share your thoughts below. Click the video on your screen right now for another deeply hidden piece of our past. I will see you there.